Good evening. The Department of Conservation this afternoon announced widespread redundancies in a bid to save money. The South's copped more than its fair share of the 164 jobs lost nationwide. Chris Bishop reports.
The people who look after the South's natural beauty spots felt the chill of government cutbacks this afternoon. Overspending last year means 37 conservation workers in the South will lose their jobs, more than a tenth of the workforce. The staff cuts will mean the Department of Conservation will have to cut back some projects. The Wildlife Protection Scheme is one of the areas that will be hit, but the Conservation Department says it hasn't yet worked out by how much. Animal control is also facing cuts. The department hopes private trappers will take over where it leaves off. Regional Manager Julian Rodder says the cuts are serious, but hopes tight housekeeping over the next year will be the answer.
I believe we can survive, and I believe that we can continue with a reasonable level of conservation output. In other words, we can still carry on the important things that we are supposed to do.
One of the places the department hopes to get money from is the national parks. An increase in hut prices is being considered for the 3 parks in our region. Hunters could soon be paying for the Department of Conservation licences, and skiing in the South could cost you more next season. The department plans to up the rents it charges to the ski field operators to bring in more money.
Dunedin lawyers hope to lodge a complaint with the Commerce Commission next week about a southern money-lending firm they're concerned about. The firm, Advanced Underwriters, loans money at a finance rate of 52%. The Otago Law Society says the rate is excessive. There are hidden costs, and the company isn't telling people the whole story when they apply for the money. Kim Hurring reports.
Advanced Underwriters is an Invercargill-based subsidiary of Christchurch's Cairns Corp. In Dunedin, the company advertises anonymously in the personal column of the Otago Daily Times. Mrs. Smith borrowed money from Advanced Underwriters to get her son out of jail for Christmas and to repair the house. She didn't bother going to a bank because she found it easy to get an Advanced Underwriters loan.
I knew somebody else that had got a loan from them. It seemed very easy, very quick, very clean cut.
But for her $3,000 loan, she had to secure her house. And over 3 years at 52%, the $3,000 became a total of $7,352 to pay back. Did you realise at the time what the interest rate might be?
No. And when I found out, I was wanting to hand the cheque back, but I was a wee bit scared. And then on top of that, I did hear of somebody else that did hand a cheque back, and they charged them well over $100 for handing the cheque straight back.
Law Society President Colin Withnell says the company expects far too much security for its loans and doesn't tell its clients the full facts until they're in over their heads.
I'm concerned that these are not reputable commercial practices.
While not strictly illegal, it's thought the company's operations may contravene sections of the Fair Trading Act. A group of people representing the law, consumer affairs and budget advice have been meeting to discuss ways to deal with the company. They've decided warning people away from this company is the answer. A default on one of these contracts leaves the borrower less protection than under the Hire Purchases Act or even bankruptcy.
These documents provide for immediate repossession without notice, and I understand that's what occurs. The repossession agent suddenly arrives unheralded on the doorstep, and the car or the video or the TV set or the fridge, all sorts of things are gone.
The Law Society believes that it's gullible people who've been caught by these contracts, but at least one won't be caught again. How do you feel about it all now?
Well, I'd never do it again. Never. I've learnt my lesson there.
We approached a director of Advanced Underwriters, but he refused to answer any questions on the matter.
There was no holding them back. It was off to school today for the Hazlett Quads as they turned 5, even though primary schools were breaking up for the holidays. The Quads, Rochelle, Katrina, Derek and Melissa, have been growing up on their parents' farm at Boggyburn in Southland. This report on their first 5 years from Jane Edwards.
Not 5 years old, but just 5 days old. The Quads in their incubators at Queen Mary Hospital in August 1983. They were 9 weeks premature, which is not unusual in multiple births, and weighed just over 1 kilogram each. A year later and they were thriving, celebrating their birthdays in typical fashion. They were also getting used to their family's farming way of life. 5 years later, and it's lambing time again on the Hazlett farm. There are plenty of helpers when it's time for the pets to be fed. And they were keen to show off some of their other pets too. Undeterred by this week's snow, the Quads made the most of their last carefree days before starting school, playing happily together. Although they look alike, their mother says their personalities are quite different. And, as on their first birthday, they each had their own cake to celebrate their 5th, the different colours reflecting their individuality. Although the Quads were looking forward to going to school, their mother was a little diffident. Today they joined their older sister Sonia and the other 90 children at the Lime Hills School in Centre Bush. And it didn't take them long to settle in. It was an exciting day for them, turning 5, starting school and being on television. But it's also the beginning of a daily routine that'll see them biking to the bus stop in time to catch the school bus at 8 o'clock. In the meantime, they've got the holidays to look forward to.
Happy birthday, kids, and it should be a great party tomorrow. And it was the last day at school for the pupils at 2 primary schools in the south. Both Wedderburn School in Otago and Fairfax in Southland closed their doors for good. Fairfax School's been at the centre of the community's life for almost a century. It was opened 94 years ago, but from today, children's voices will be just an echo of the past. Arriving for their last day, the dozen or so pupils currently at the school were cheerful. The usual routine of lessons was set aside to mark the passing of an era in the community. The decline in the roll's been gradual, and it's not just the rural recession that's caused it.
Well, it probably started, it'll be 10, 12 years ago, I guess, when the bridge over the river at Laparima here was washed out, the old bridge. That was part of the start of it, I guess.
Past pupils, the school committee and locals joined in the Last Supper, a potluck dinner. The sole charge teacher, Brian Payne, and his family will be moving on to a new position in the North Island. And as for the 5 remaining pupils who would have come back next term, they were taking the bus to Isla Bank School, just 8 kilometres away. A tussle is underway in Dunedin for one of New Zealand's more obscure national titles. The country has only 50 registered players of the Japanese board strategy game called Go. Nearly half of them are in town for the New Zealand Championships. Chris Bishop joined one of the sessions.
The game was invented by a Chinese emperor 5,000 years ago and today has millions of players worldwide. In Japan, it's as popular as rugby is in this country. Big money is paid to the 300 Japanese professionals. The game is one of strategy. Counters, called stones, are moved to capture the opponent's territory on the board. Thousands of moves can be made in games lasting up to 4 hours. Defending champion Ray Tomes from Auckland believes the game needs more support in New Zealand.
I think there'd be more people who would play the game if they knew about it, but there's not a lot of people heard of the game. I guess this is an opportunity for a few people to hear about the game.
What sort of a game is that?
It's a game of skill. There's no luck in it, and I guess the nearest parallel that people would be familiar with would be chess. The difference with chess is that the rules are much simpler, but the game is just as deep as chess, so to master it does require the same sort of level of keenness.
9 of the 22 competitors are from Dunedin, including one of the front runners for the title, Barry Fees. Winner of the tournament will travel to the World Go Championships in Japan next year. In the meantime, players are looking for sponsorship and a fair go from the New Zealand public.
And it looks all go too. A group of more than 20 women from all over the country are at Berwick Forest Lodge this weekend at a camp being run by the Southern Women's Self-Defence Network. They're the women who teach self-defence to others, and this course is a follow-up to reinforce both their training skills and their own techniques. Lee Davies went along to look at the progress of self-defence training in the region.
This is what they're teaching at self-defence courses in the United States. In New Zealand, it hasn't come to that. But women here do need to know how to defend themselves, and those in our region have an advantage. Southland has more women-trained self-defence instructors than any other province in the country, and they're teaching hundreds of women the skills they need to defend themselves.
It covers the gamut of types of attacks and the types of responses. What you were seeing this morning was physical techniques, which would be about 50% of the course. The other 50% is talking about situations that women find themselves in that require other sorts of responses, like, for example, obscene phone calls, maybe being followed, sexual harassment at work, things where verbal self-defence and maybe even just getting out of the situation are more appropriate.
These are the techniques which will get women out of trouble, but naturally they have to stop short of inflicting pain. It makes it hard to tell what might happen in a real confrontation.
In the courses that we run, we get the women after a couple of sessions to go home and to set up practice sessions with their men folk at home, whether they're husbands or friends of the family or whatever, and that gives partly some realism to it.
Despite the trend to more violent methods of self-defence overseas, the Southern Women's Network isn't keen to see women here using weapons.
I think that attackers would be much more likely to actually take advantage of a loosening up in the laws like that than women to defend themselves, and I really don't believe that you actually need them. We do teach in the course defence against attackers with weapons, but we don't rely on the person defending themselves to have a weapon.
Are those pure physical techniques enough to put off an attacker?
Oh yes, they work. They work very, very well.
I'm sure they do. And that's it from us at the end of a week when winter reminds us it still has a few more days to run, but it looks like spring starts next week. Big sporting action in the province this weekend with Otago taking on Southland and Invercargill. And if you're staying in Dunedin, well, of course, we've got all the great basketball action tomorrow night at the Dunedin Stadium. But let's have a look at those 3 o'clock temperatures today. And predicting a high tomorrow of Invercargill of 11 degrees for the rugby. In Dunedin, it's going to be 12 degrees. The highs today went to Palmerston and Koura with 14 and the low of 5 degrees to Tayana. Good luck if you're heading away for the school holidays too, and take care on the roads over the weekend. We'll be back on Monday night. Good night.